The Zenithian Empire's dominance, the star map displayed in the Council chamber of Zixtertius stretched across the entire curved ceiling, showing 847 star systems bathed in the soft blue glow of Zenithian control. Each point of light represented perfect order, calculated efficiency, and absolute dominance. For 3,000 years, the Zenithian Empire had expanded across the galaxy with methodical precision, bringing their vision of perfection to every world they encountered. Ascended Prime Kelthara stood at the center of the chamber, their bio-enhanced form gleaming under the starlight. Like all members of the Council of Ascended Minds, they had long ago abandoned the limitations of their original biology. Their consciousness existed in a crystalline matrix that could process information at quantum speeds, while their physical form could manipulate matter at the molecular level. To them, the Empire was not just territory but a living work of art, every planet and species perfectly arranged according to Zenithian ideals. The Outer Rim Survey has discovered another primitive system, reported Tactical Coordinator Vex-9, their metallic voice carrying no emotion. Third planet shows signs of technological development. Initial scans indicate they call themselves humans. Kelthara's multifaceted eyes shifted to examine the data streams flowing through the air around them. The information painted a picture of a chaotic world where billions of beings lived in constant conflict and change. Cities rose and fell, governments shifted like weather patterns, and the inhabitants seemed to thrive on unpredictability. Was everything the Zenithians had spent millennia trying to eliminate from the galaxy? Fascinating, Kelthara murmured, though fascination for a Zenithian was merely a clinical interest in anomalies. Their development pattern defies all known models of civilization advancement. No unified government, no single controlling intelligence, no logical progression toward perfection. The data showed humans engaged in activities that seemed counterproductive to survival. They created art that served no functional purpose, engaged in recreational activities that wasted energy, and made decisions based on abstract concepts like love and hope rather than optimal outcomes. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to actively celebrate their differences rather than working toward uniformity. Shall we proceed with standard integration protocols? Asked Military Prime Zixtwell, their form bristling with weapon systems that existed partially in other dimensions. Not yet, Kelthara replied. This species exhibits patterns we have not encountered before. We will observe first, then make contact. If they can be guided toward proper order, they may serve the Empire. If not, the sentence hung in the air like a threat. On Earth, Ambassador Chen Wei stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station, watching the sunrise paint the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and crimson. As head of the United Nations Xenobiology Department, a position created only 3 years earlier when humanity first detected signs of intelligent life beyond their solar system, Chen had spent countless hours preparing for this moment. The radio telescopes had been detecting structured signals for months, and today would mark humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. Captain Lisa Rodriguez floated beside him, her military bearing evident even in zero gravity. As commander of Earth's newly formed Space Defense Initiative, she represented humanity's military interests in what everyone hoped would be a peaceful first encounter. The irony was not lost on either of them that humanity's first diplomatic meeting with aliens was taking place on a space station, originally built for scientific research but now bristling with defensive systems. Contact in 30 minutes, Lisa reported, checking her tablet. The alien vessel just dropped out of whatever faster-than-light system they use. It's holding position at the edge of the solar system. Chen nodded, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Everything humanity had imagined about first contact was about to become reality. Would the aliens be benevolent explorers seeking knowledge and friendship? Would they be conquerors looking for new territories? Or would they be something entirely beyond human comprehension? The answer came in the form of a ship that defied every principle of engineering humanity understood. It appeared to be constructed from crystalline structures that shifted and flowed like liquid while maintaining perfect geometric patterns. The vessel was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying, clearly the product of technology thousands of years beyond human capability. Communication was established through mathematical principles, then evolved into structured language as the alien computers learned human speech patterns with impossible speed. The voice that emerged from the speakers was neither male nor female, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions humanity could not perceive. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet," the voice said with perfect pronunciation. "I am Diplomatic Prime Ketsevan of the Zenithian Empire. We have observed your species and wish to establish formal relations." Chen stepped forward, his heart racing. "Welcome to our solar system. I am Ambassador Chen Wei, representing the United Nations of Earth. We are honored by your visit and eager to learn about your civilization." "Your enthusiasm is noted," Ketsevan replied, though there was something in the tone that suggested the enthusiasm was viewed as a curious defect, rather than a positive trait. "We represent the most advanced civilization in this galaxy. For 3 millennia, we have brought order and purpose to 847 star systems. Your species shows potential for integration into our empire, though significant modifications to your social structures would be required." Lisa and Chen exchanged glances. The word integration carried implications that neither found comfortable. "What exactly do you mean by integration?" Lisa asked, her military training making her direct. "Your species exhibits chaotic tendencies that disrupt optimal function," Ketsevan explained with the patience of a teacher addressing children. "You maintain multiple competing governments, engage in wasteful conflicts, and make decisions based on emotional responses rather than logical calculations. Under Zenithian guidance, these inefficiencies would be corrected." Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the space station's environment. "We appreciate your offer, but humanity values our diversity and independence. Perhaps we could establish trade relations or cultural exchanges instead." There was a pause that lasted exactly 4.7 seconds, as if Ketsevan was consulting with higher authorities through faster-than-light communication. "Your response indicates a fundamental misunderstanding. This was not an offer but an observation of inevitability. All species eventually recognize the superiority of Zenithian order. Those who adapt quickly find the transition less difficult." The diplomatic session continued for 3 hours, with humanity's representatives trying to find common ground, while the Zenithians made it increasingly clear that they viewed human civilization as a problem to be solved. When the alien ship finally departed, Chen and Lisa remained in stunned silence. "They're not explorers or conquerors," Lisa said finally. "They're gardeners, and they see us as weeds." Back on Earth, President Marcus Vale convened an emergency session of the Global Security Council. The man who had led humanity through climate change disasters and resource wars now faced a threat beyond anything in human experience. The reports from the space station painted a picture of an alien empire that saw human nature itself as something to be corrected. "What are our options?" Vale asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. General Patricia Hayles, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, spread holographic displays across the conference table. Militarily, we're looking at a civilization that can manipulate matter and energy in ways we barely understand. Their single ship showed technology centuries beyond our capabilities. If they have 847 star systems under their control, we're talking about resources and industrial capacity that dwarf Earth's by factors we can't calculate. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the lead scientist at the Advanced Research Division, leaned forward. But there might be something else to consider. During the communication session, our sensors detected unusual patterns in their technology. Everything they use seems to be based on quantum coherence and dimensional manipulation. It's incredibly advanced, but it might also be vulnerable to certain types of interference. What kind of interference? Vale asked. Random, chaotic inputs, Sarah explained. Their systems appear to require perfect order and predictability to function. Human behavior, with all its randomness and emotional variability, might actually disrupt their technology in ways they don't expect. The meeting was interrupted by an aide rushing in with an urgent message. Mr. President, we're receiving another transmission from the aliens. This time, it's not a diplomatic message. The main screen activated, showing the crystalline form of Ascended Prime Kelthara. When they spoke, their voice carried the weight of absolute authority. People of Earth, you have been evaluated and found lacking in the qualities necessary for peaceful integration. Your chaotic nature poses a threat to a galactic order that cannot be tolerated. President Vale stepped forward. We seek only to live in peace. Surely there's room in a galaxy of 847 star systems for one small world that chooses its own path. Peace is irrelevant, Kelthara replied. Order is absolute. You will submit to Zenithian guidance, or you will be removed as an obstacle to galactic harmony. You have one planetary rotation to make your decision. The transmission ended, leaving Earth's leaders staring at a blank screen. Outside the windows of the conference room, the lights of Washington, D.C. twinkled in the gathering dusk, each one representing millions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their entire species had just been given an ultimatum by powers beyond their comprehension. 24 hours, Vale said quietly. They've given us 24 hours to surrender everything that makes us human. General Hayes was already activating emergency protocols. I'm mobilizing every defense system we have. It won't be enough, but we won't go down without a fight. Dr. Mitchell was staring at her tablet, running calculations at frantic speed. Wait, there might be another way. If I'm right about their technology's vulnerability to chaos, then the very thing they want to eliminate about us might be our greatest weapon. As Earth's leaders debated humanity's response, sensors around the solar system detected the arrival of more Zenithian ships. Not one vessel this time, but dozens, each one larger than the first. They arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns around Earth's moon, their crystalline hulls gleaming with energy that existed in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, Admiral Zixprim stood on the command bridge of the flagship Eternal Order, observing the primitive blue world through sensors that could analyze matter down to the subatomic level. To their enhanced perception, Earth appeared as a swirling mass of chaos and disorder, billions of biological entities engaged in completely unpredictable behaviors. It was beautiful in its own way, like watching a chemical reaction that produced random patterns, but it was also dangerous to the carefully maintained order of the galaxy. Preliminary bombardment will target their lunar installations, Zix Prime announced to their subordinates. We will demonstrate the futility of resistance before offering final terms. The attack began at exactly 24 hours after the ultimatum had been delivered. Beams of coherent energy that existed partially outside normal space-time struck the lunar mining colonies, reducing them to constituent atoms in seconds. The message was clear. Resistance was not only futile, but would result in the complete erasure of human civilization. But as the energy weapons fired, something unexpected happened. The chaotic radio signals emanating from Earth, the random thoughts and emotions of billions of human minds, created interference patterns that the Zenithian targeting systems had never encountered. For just a moment, their perfect calculations wavered, and several shots missed their intended targets by microscopic amounts. It was a tiny deviation, barely noticeable to beings who thought in terms of absolute precision. But Dr. Sarah Mitchell, monitoring the attack from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, noticed the anomaly and smiled grimly. The chaos that the Zenithians saw as humanity's greatest weakness might indeed prove to be their salvation. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, and it would be fought with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Unpredictability, creativity, and the beautiful, chaotic nature of the human spirit, * humanity's awakening and the Empire's fall. The destruction of Lunar Base 7 marked the beginning of what historians would later call the Chaos War. Within hours of the attack, Zenithian forces had established orbital control around Earth, their crystalline ships forming perfect geometric patterns that blocked most space traffic. From their perspective, the campaign was proceeding exactly as calculated. The humans had been given a demonstration of Zenithian power, and now they would either surrender or face systematic elimination. Commander Jake Harrison crouched in the ruins of what had been the European Space Agency's primary communication hub. The Zenithian bombardment had been surgically precise, destroying military installations while leaving civilian areas mostly untouched. It was a message written in melted metal and shattered concrete. Resist us, and everything you've built will be erased with the same clinical efficiency. Jake's team moved through the wreckage like shadows, salvaging what equipment they could, before the next wave of alien patrols arrived. As a former Special Forces operator turned astronaut, he had been selected to lead one of several underground resistance cells operating across the globe. The official military command structure had been crippled in the first hours of the invasion, leaving scattered groups like his to carry on the fight. "Commander, you need to see this," whispered Sergeant Maria Santos, an engineer who had volunteered for the resistance after watching her orbital construction platform get vaporized. She was holding a fragment of metal that had been part of the communication array's main transmitter. Jake examined the fragment under a portable microscope, where the Zenithian energy beam had struck. The metal showed unusual crystalline patterns that seemed to shift and flow even as he watched. "What am I looking at?" "Quantum disruption," Maria explained, her voice barely audible. "The alien weapons don't just destroy matter, they reorganize it at the subatomic level. But look at this section here." She pointed to an area where the patterns seemed chaotic and unformed. This part was damaged by the main transmitter overloading during the attack. The feedback from our own random signal patterns actually interfered with their weapons reorganization process. Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time since the invasion began. "Are you saying our own technology can disrupt theirs?" "Not exactly," Maria replied, "but chaos can. The Zenithians build everything on quantum coherence and dimensional stability. Their technology requires absolute predictability to function properly. Random interference, especially from biological sources, might actually cause their systems to malfunction. Meanwhile, in a hidden laboratory complex beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Sarah Mitchell worked feverishly to understand the implications of her discovery. The facility had been constructed during the early days of human space exploration as a backup research center, its existence known only to a handful of scientists and government officials. Now it served as humanity's last hope for finding a weapon against their seemingly invincible enemies. The data scrolling across her screens painted a picture that both terrified and excited her. Zenithian technology was indeed more advanced than anything humanity had achieved, but it was also fundamentally different in ways that might work to human advantage. Where human technology embraced controlled chaos and random variables, Zenithian systems required perfect order and absolute predictability. It's like comparing a jazz improvisation to a classical symphony, she muttered to herself, making notes on her tablet. Their technology is incredibly sophisticated, but it can't handle spontaneous variations. Her assistant, Dr. Robert Kim, looked up from his own workstation. The biological scans are showing similar patterns. Human brain activity generates quantum-level random fluctuations that their sensors can't predict or compensate for. We're literally invisible to their consciousness detection systems. Sarah paused in her calculations, a wild idea beginning to form. What if we could amplify those fluctuations? Create devices that generate the same kind of chaotic interference on a larger scale. Chaos field generators, Robert said, his eyes widening with understanding. We could build weapons that don't fire energy or projectiles, but pure randomness. Above them, the war continued to unfold with mathematical precision. Zenithian forces moved across Earth's surface in calculated patterns, systematically dismantling human civilization's infrastructure while avoiding unnecessary casualties. To them, humans were not enemies to be destroyed, but problems to be solved. Once the chaotic elements of human society were removed, the remaining population could be integrated into the Empire's perfect order, ascended. Prime Kelthara observed the campaign from the flagship's command center, their enhanced consciousness, processing thousands of data streams simultaneously. Everything was proceeding according to projections. Human military resistance had collapsed within the first 72 hours, and civilian populations were already beginning to adapt to Zenithian administrative protocols. The largest remaining resistance cell has been located in the North American continent, reported Tactical Coordinator Vex-9. Shall we proceed with elimination? Negative, Kelthara replied. Observe them first. Their behavioral patterns may provide insights into preventing future chaos outbreaks. It was a decision that would prove to be the Empire's greatest mistake. Commander, Harrison's resistance cell had grown from a handful of military survivors to a network of hundreds spanning 3 continents. They communicated through methods the Zenithians couldn't monitor, using everything from carrier pigeons to graffiti-coded messages to human chain networks that passed information through personal contact. The aliens' advanced sensors could detect electronic signals and quantum communications, but they couldn't predict or intercept purely human methods of organization. We've got confirmation from Dr. Mitchell's team, Jake announced during a clandestine meeting in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath New York City. The chaos field generators are ready for testing. If they work the way she thinks they will, we might actually have a chance. The assembled resistance fighters, a mix of former military personnel, scientists, engineers, and ordinary civilians who had refused to accept alien rule listened with expressions ranging from hope to skepticism. They had all seen the devastating efficiency of Zenithian technology, the idea that human unpredictability could somehow overcome such advanced weapons seemed almost too good to be true. "How does it work?" asked Dr. Alina Vasquez, a quantum physicist who had escaped the destruction of CERN. Jake activated a secure holographic display showing simplified schematics. The devices generate quantum-level random fluctuations that mimic human brain activity, but amplified thousands of times. When Zenithian systems encounter these fields, their coherence algorithms can't process the chaotic input. Their technology essentially has a nervous breakdown. The first test came 3 days later, when a Zenithian patrol ship detected unusual activity in the ruins of Chicago. The patrol consisted of a single vessel crewed by 5 ascended minds, more than sufficient to handle any conceivable human threat. Their sensors showed approximately 30 biological signatures moving through the devastated city, clearly attempting to salvage supplies from the rubble. As the ship descended to investigate, engineer Maria Santos activated the prototype Chaos field generator hidden in the wreckage of a collapsed skyscraper. The device, no larger than a briefcase, began emitting quantum fluctuations that interfered with the patrol ship's navigation systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Zenithian vessel's perfect crystalline hull began to flicker and waver as its dimensional stabilizers struggled to process the chaotic input. Warning alarms sounded throughout the ship as systems that had functioned flawlessly for centuries suddenly began producing random, unpredictable results. "Navigation failure," reported the ship's pilot, their enhanced voice carrying an emotion that Zenithians rarely experienced. "Confusion. Dimensional coordinates are shifting randomly. Coherence field generators are producing unstable output." The patrol ship crashed into Lake Michigan with all the grace of a falling brick. Its advanced technology reduced to expensive scrap metal by exposure to pure, undiluted human chaos. Word of the successful test spread through the resistance network like wildfire. Within weeks, chaos field generators were being constructed in hidden workshops from London to Tokyo, using components salvaged from the wreckage of human civilization. The devices were crude by Zenithian standards, built with spare parts and improvised materials. But they possessed something the aliens couldn't counter: complete unpredictability. The first major engagement came when Admiral Zixprime led a massive assault on the Asian resistance strongholds. 500 Zenithian vessels, supported by ground forces numbering in the tens of thousands, moved to crush the human insurgency once and for all. Their formation was a thing of mathematical beauty, each ship positioned according to optimal tactical calculations that had been perfected over 3 millennia of conquest. They encountered something that their calculations had never accounted for: an enemy that refused to follow any logical patterns. Chaos field generators hidden throughout the battle zone activated simultaneously, creating overlapping fields of quantum randomness that turned the Zenithian fleet's own perfection against them. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems produced contradictory readings. Weapons fired at random targets as targeting computers struggled to process chaotic input. The dimensional manipulation technology that had made the Zenith masters of the galaxy began tearing apart their own vessels as it responded to unpredictable quantum fluctuations. But the real surprise came from the human fighters themselves. Led by Commander Harrison and armed with weapons that were deliberately unreliable and unpredictable, they moved through the chaos with an adaptability that amazed even themselves. Where Zenithian forces froze when their systems malfunctioned, humans improvised and overcame. Where alien technology required perfect conditions to function, human determination found ways to succeed despite impossible odds. The battle raged for 3 days, and when it ended, the Zenithian fleet was in ruins. Admiral Zixprime, their crystalline form partially shattered by exposure to chaos field radiation, stood in the wreckage of their flagship and experienced something completely alien to their enhanced consciousness: fear. The news of the defeat spread throughout the Zenithian Empire faster than light itself. For 3,000 years, they had been invincible, their perfect order bringing peace and stability to 847 star systems. Now, a single primitive species had shattered their most powerful fleet using nothing more than organized chaos. On Zixtertius Ascended Prime, Kelthera called an emergency session of the Council of Ascended Minds. The chamber that had once displayed the Empire's conquests in glowing blue now showed vast red zones where Zenithian technology was failing. The chaos field technology had somehow spread beyond Earth, carried by quantum fluctuations that their own faster-than-light communication network had inadvertently transmitted across the galaxy. The contamination is expanding, reported Science Prime Thelfor, their voice carrying harmonics of panic. 17 star systems have reported technology failures. Our dimensional stabilizers cannot compensate for the random quantum fluctuations. The humans have introduced into local spacetime. Kelthara's multifaceted eyes dimmed as they processed the full implications of the crisis. How is this possible? How can primitive chaos overcome advanced order? The answer came from an unexpected source. Communication Prime Zealot, responsible for monitoring alien broadcasts, had been analyzing human transmissions since the beginning of the invasion. "I believe I understand," they said, their voice carrying a note of something approaching. Wonder. The humans do not see chaos as a problem to be solved. They see it as a tool to be used. Their entire civilization is built on the principle that unpredictability and individual variation are strengths, not weaknesses. Impossible, declared Military Prime Yaxwan. Chaos leads to inefficiency, conflict, and waste. Perfect order is the only logical goal of civilization. And yet, Zealot continued, their chaos has defeated our order. Perhaps we have been wrong about the nature of strength. The final battle for Earth came when Kelthara themselves led the largest fleet in Zenithian history to the human homeworld. Nearly 1,000 ships, representing the combined military might of an empire that spanned the galaxy, moved to crush the source of the chaos contamination before it could spread further. They arrived to find Earth defended by a ragtag collection of human vessels that appeared to have been assembled from scrap metal and spare parts. The largest human ship was barely 1/10 the size of the smallest Zenithian cruiser, and their weapons seemed to be cobbled together from industrial equipment and improvised materials. It should have been no contest at all, but as the Zenithian fleet moved into perfect attack formation, every human vessel activated chaos field generators of unprecedented power. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, working with engineer Maria Santos and thousands of volunteers across the globe, had created a planetary defense system that turned Earth itself into a chaos generator. The effect on the Zenithian fleet was catastrophic. Ships began materializing inside other ships as their dimensional navigation systems produced random coordinates. Weapons fired on their own vessels as targeting computers lost the ability to distinguish between friend and foe. The perfect crystalline hulls that had been designed to manipulate matter and energy began dissolving as their molecular structure became too chaotic to maintain. In the center of the chaos, Kelthara felt their enhanced consciousness beginning to fragment. For the first time in 3,000 years, they experienced genuine emotion, not the clinical interest they called fascination, but actual fear, wonder, and something that might have been respect. Recall all forces, they commanded, their voice no longer carrying the absolute authority of perfect order. Withdraw from this system immediately. But it was too late. The chaos contamination had spread too far, carried by the Empire's own communication networks to every corner of Zenithian space. On world after world, the rigid order that had held the Empire together for millennia began to crumble as local populations discovered that individuality and unpredictability were not flaws to be corrected but strengths to be celebrated. The Zenithian Empire's withdrawal from Earth marked the beginning of what historians would call the Great Liberation. As news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy, species that had lived under Zenithian rule for thousands of years began to rediscover their own capacity for chaos and creativity. Art, music, literature, and individual expression flowered on worlds that had been sterile and orderly for so long that their inhabitants had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. President Vale stood in the rebuilt United Nations headquarters, looking out at a world that had been forever changed by its encounter with the stars. The scars of the invasion were still visible, but they were being healed by human hands working with alien allies who had learned the value of diversity and unpredictability. So what's next? Asked Ambassador Chenwei, who had become humanity's first interstellar diplomat. Vale smiled an expression that would have been incomprehensible to the old Zenithian order, but was now spreading throughout the galaxy. We keep being human, he said. We explore, we create, we make mistakes, and we learn from them. We show the galaxy that chaos isn't something to be feared or eliminated, but something to be embraced and celebrated. Far across the galaxy, on the former capital world of Zixtertius, ascended Prime Kelphara stood in what had once been the council chamber. The perfect geometric patterns that had once defined their existence were gone, replaced by something that their enhanced consciousness was only beginning to understand: the beautiful, terrifying, wonderful chaos of genuine life. For the first time in 3 millennia, they smiled.